Oz Chatterjee joins me on the line now. Is that a fair comment, Oz?
I think it is. You know, the last time I was on your show, James, we were talking about Donald Trump striking chemical weapons facilities in Syria, and we were talking about, you know, even a stop clock being right twice a day. You know, it's sort of.
But this would be twice. This would be the second time then.
Yeah, you know, it's. You know, even myself, I'm not sure. Here's the thing: no experts that I know, thought this was coming. I mean, no one saw it coming, right?
That's not in and of itself a bad thing or a worrying thing, is
but
it?
This man, this butcher, had the sort of godlike aura about him, as one Iraqi analyst said yesterday. A godlike aura. You don't expect gods to die.
Gosh.
You know, this man was
so like a cross between a sort of Robin Hood type figure in the minds of the Iranian.
Let's put into context for people that don't know him. Qassem Soleimani was the head of the Quds Force, and as the head of the Quds Force, he was in charge of every Iranian terrorist proxy group across the Middle East. That's Hezbollah, Kataib Hezbollah, the PMU, you know, every single group across Syria, Yemen even, that's been killing civilians, that's been blowing up journalists, politicians. These people have been causing havoc and bloodshed unparalleled across the Middle East for decades, including the starvation and depopulation of forced transfer of cities in Syria, including the hundreds of Iraqi men and boys that were shot dead in Baghdad.
I'm just going to pause you there because you know a lot more about these issues than I do, and most of my listeners will. But we're talking essentially about cities and towns whose residents were starved to death. When we look at Aleppo and Qusair and Medea, Zabadani, this is, I mean, brutality on a scale that perhaps the West hasn't absorbed.
On his orders. And the Iraqis that were shot dead in Baghdad protesting against their government, they were killed on his orders. And the Iranians that were shot dead protesting against the Iranian government within the last few weeks, they were shot dead on his orders. The idea that world peace was advanced by letting this man kill with impunity, it's just patently absurd to people that know who Qassem Soleimani is and covered his crimes. That's not to say that there won't be a retaliation from Iran, or that this is a sort of a contribution to world peace, as it were. Life isn't that simple. You know, it's like when we killed Osama bin Laden. Some people were saying, well, surely Al Qaeda are going to strike back now. Does that mean that Osama bin Laden should have stayed alive?
Should have been left alive. David Aronovich, the Times columnist, has just contributed an interesting distillation, pointing out Soleimani was a murderer so-and-so working for a horrible regime. If he'd been told to, he'd have quite happily killed you and your family.
Yes.
Nevertheless, killing him in Baghdad represents an escalation in which the outcome is unknowable. And this is the bit I'd like you to comment on next, because it plays back to what you said about none of the experts seeing this on the horizon. It's part of no obvious strategy. I mean, to be simplistic, it could be a strategy of self-preservation and distraction on Donald Trump's part, but in terms of geopolitics, no obvious strategy is quite a frightening description.
Yes. Well, I'll say one thing in some of the criticisms of this that seem to be correct is that not just that there's no strategy in place, but some people are claiming that this is a sort of deterrent. This is a warning sign to Iran. You don't do it. It's the opposite of a deterrent. This is killing a man so important that Iran has to retaliate.
It's a provocation.
Iran can't not retaliate. But at the same time, this was a man who would have killed many, many, many more hundreds of thousands of people than he already had done if continued to carry on killing with impunity, which is what basically Western policy has been towards him for however long. So
if I said to you now, why do you think Donald Trump ordered this assassination, what would you say?
Well, because I think Donald Trump's a petty man, and he probably saw Qassem Soleimani's name sprayed by the Iraqi
at the embassy,
outside the embassy, and he probably got goaded by Khomeini's tweet. You know, I think Donald Trump is quite a simple man, and I think he is quick to anger. And I think that the thing is about Qassem Soleimani is he's been goading the US into some sort of response for for a very long time.
Well, so some observers have suggested that he was inviting and seeking martyrdom.
I don't think he was inviting and seeking martyrdom, as it were. I mean, as perverse as it is to call him a martyr.
Of course.
It's that he was behaving like he was untouchable, like he could kill whoever he wanted, and he has the deaths of over 600 American service members on his hands alone. I mean, that's already a given. So just those 600 plus all of the hundreds of thousands of Iraqi, Syrian, Yemeni, Lebanese people that he has the bloods of also. It's astonishing to me that someone like this could kill so many people and still travel around, with a sense of impunity, like he can't be touched.
And a sort of sense of corrupt celebrity as well.
Yes. I mean, but the thing is he drove fear into the hearts of his opponents. He drove fear into the hearts of everyone across the Middle East. He'd been treating it as his own personal battleground, and he was so good at what he did. Like, I mean, I'm talking about a man who killed people that I love, who killed people that are close to me. So
yes.
It's hard to talk about, but he was effective. He was brutal. He was ruthless. He was a relentless strategist. I mean, he was just unparalleled when it comes to military command in the Middle East. This will reverberate across the region. This is a new era. This is an era-defining moment for the Middle East. What has happened today is unprecedented. We're in uncharted waters. We don't know how Iran will respond. We are talking about a very dangerous escalation, both for the Middle East and for the rest of the world. But we're also talking about the death of someone who has more blood on his hands than anyone else in the Middle East right now, bar probably Bashar al-Assad.
His ally. If I were to push you, and you're more than welcome to tell me to get lost, what would you expect Iran to do, or even sort of speculate?
Here's the thing: Iran isn't suicidal, or rather, the Iranian leadership aren't suicidal. Israel has been targeting Iranian militias across Syria and now recently Iraq for years now, over 1,000 airstrikes, I believe. And Iran hasn't really responded in kind, and it could at any point. For all the rhetoric of death to Israel, death to the Jews, we're going to wipe Israel off the map. All of this rhetoric, Israel's been bombing their forces across the Middle East, and Iran has done very little.
Because they know that if they did, then it would ramp up on the other side. So there's a sort of curious, if I've understood you correctly, and I stress my ignorance again on this issue. So it's almost as if they're trying to balance out their bellicose saber rattling while also coming under attack. But if they responded, then that attack would escalate in a way that they wouldn't want. Well,
it's a little more than saber-rattling, because at the end of the day, the Iraqis and Syrians and the Yemenis who are dying at Soleimani's hands, it's very real to them. Iran focuses unparalleled brutality towards civilians that are protesting in the streets against it, but against large military powers, the US, Israel, Britain. It's much more of a paper tiger that relies on doing things you don't expect them to do.
And that's the fear. I mean, this was, as I understand it, and I may well have got this off your Twitter feed, so forgive me if I'm repeating your own words back to you, but the previous calculation would be that Iran would activate terror cells across the world if an attempt was made on this guy's life.
That was the Obama's calculation,
yes.
Indeed. That's very possible. Iran has focused in more recent years on the Middle East, just on killing as many human beings in the Middle East as they can to gain regional hegemony. That question is now, how far does Iran want to take this? And also, I think we have to put into perspective is that there are two actors here. Yes, Donald Trump has decided to drone strike Qassem Soleimani, but we can't remove everything that Qassem Soleimani has done at this point to reach this. At what point, it's like the chicken and the egg argument. It's not like this all started when Donald Trump decided to fire a missile at him. This has been going on for a long time. So at what point is Iran's reaction, taken into
Is there any chance, I'm going to be late for the news, so finally and briefly, is there any chance Iran will do nothing? And they've already announced his replacement as the head of
Iran will have to to do something. It's like face saving.
Right.
It's kind of like Donald Trump with the U.S. Embassy. If I asked you, is Donald Trump really going to do nothing after the whole Benghazi thing? You kind of looked at it and thought he has to do something. What is it he's going to do? Well, we woke up this morning with our answer. Now Indeed. The question that the rest of the world wants to know is what's Iran going to do in response? And we all await with bated breath.
And how far will the ramifications of that response reach?